If you want a strategy game with a good amount of action elements, a good story, great presentation, and just overall quality, here's the game you should look at. Valkyria Chronicles was developed and published by SEGA and released in 2008. The game initially came about when its developers wanted to make something similar to SEGA's Sakura Wars series, but didn't want to be restricted by the license. They also wanted to make the player attached to their units, and develop a unique battle system that allowed for freedom and choice. This resulted in the third-person strategy RPG that has stood the test of time. The game takes place in the fictional continent of Europa during the Second European War. Said war is being fought between the Federation in the west and the Empire in the east, with our story concerning the small neutral country of Gallia. While seemingly not important in the grand scheme of the war, Gallia is rich in Ragnite, a substance that acts as everything from a power source to medical equipment, and so the Empire invades Gallia in order to plunder its resources. This puts you into the role of Welkin Gunther, an astute and aloof nature lover, as he finds his hometown of Brule being attacked by the Empire's forces. Using his father's old tank, he saves his town and finds himself drafted into the Gallian militia, put in charge of Squad 7. The game will chronicle Squad 7's adventures as they fight back against the Empire's forces, and maybe discover another reason as to why the Empire would invade Gallia. The story is a little formulaic, though the fantastical aspects of the setting keep things interesting with new scenarios. While I would say that the story has an overall light-hearted tone for a game about war, it does go into some dark territory, with the prejudice towards the dark-haired Darksons being a good example. While the overarching story is a grand adventure, Valkyria Chronicles also shines in terms of the characters. From the main cast to the minor characters, the game does a good job of giving everyone a personality. The game has a lot of cutscenes, and while many of them are there to advance the plot, there's also a lot of dialogue and some entire cutscenes that just consist of characters talking about themselves or cracking a joke. The game has a good sense of humor. Welkin makes for a good protagonist. He's not in favor of the war, but he isn't afraid to get involved with it to protect his home. He's laid back and a bit of a goof, but able to be serious when the need arises. He's balanced out by his Sergeant Alicia, who's able to balance off his eccentricities. The two have some good chemistry, and their relationship feels very genuine. But even the rank and file of their squad, who in other games may be little more than a name and a face, are given unique personalities, quirks, and backstories, all detailed in the menus and the gameplay. And hey, if you're a Skies of Arcadia fan, you may have a pleasant surprise in one of your recruitable units. But if you've never seen this game before, a real pleasant surprise might be the presentation. Valkyria Chronicles uses a watercolor-esque style of graphics, and it looks great. It's not just the in-game graphics though, but the battle maps and the menus. The battle maps are styled with sketches of terrain and drawn-in enemy lines, while the main menu is a book. The game is told as a historical piece, with the player reading about the game's events and flipping through the pages of a story. The book also has a glossary detailing each character, the weapons the armies use, and extra bits of history, just like a real textbook. The characters are given an anime art style that I feel really helps in giving each a distinct look from the other. It's always a good thing when you have an extensive cast. A small thing I also like is the uniform design. While the characters have military uniforms reminiscent of real life, I like the little fantastical touches like the added armor plating. It keeps it from being too generic. The music here is also appropriately grand feeling, very classical and appropriate for a war setting. The sound effects can also be really satisfying too. I like how certain actions have the onomatopoeia appear as pop-up text. I also feel like the voice acting is very well done. They even have unique voice lines for every recruitable unit. A small touch, but a nice one. But even if this game had a lackluster story and presentation, I still think it'd be worth looking at for its gameplay. The game is a strategy RPG with a heavy focus on third-person shooting. At the start of each level, you'll pick a handful of units to deploy, and you and the enemy will take turns of actions until one of you seizes the other's objective. At the start of each turn, you'll be given points, which you can spend one of to move a single unit, or two to move a tank. You can also spend these points to give a special order to boost the unit or cause some kind of effect, or you can even just keep your remaining points until the next round. Once you select a unit, you can move them around to spot enemies, find cover to take less damage, and use your action to attack. Attacking will freeze time around you so you can line up your perfect shot, with enemies taking more damage if you can hit their weak point, the head for infantry, and the glowing radiators for tanks. Try your best to take out enemies in one go though, since if you don't, you'll get a chance to counterattack. Time stopping is important though, as when time isn't stopped, every enemy you're in range of will passively shoot at you as you move. Of course, this does go the other way as well, so positioning can be very important. Good positioning in this game can allow you to take out enemy units before they get too close, as well as to make sure no enemy sneaks up on you from your blind spots. You can actually move an individual unit as many times as you want, with the only downside being that their movement will gradually decrease until the next round. But if you can put them in a spot where they can attack multiple units, feel free to select them again and again until their job is done. While that's the general description of combat though, that's not what every unit is meant to be doing, as Valkyria Chronicles has a very simple but well-rounded class system. The game has 5 main classes. Scouts are good all-around units, coming with the highest mobility, and rifles that provide good range, accuracy, and damage if you can land those headshots. Then you have shock troopers, who can't move as far, but can take more damage and do a lot more with their machine guns. Lancers are your anti-armor class, not useful against infantry, but can sneak around to the weak points of tanks to blow them up. Engineers are your support class, coming with decent movement, the same rifle as the scout, and the abilities to disarm mines and repair your tank. Finally, you have snipers, who are good at taking out infantry from a distance. While not a class in the same way as the others, your tank, the Edelweiss, is also an important unit. The Edelweiss is basically immune to the passive shots of enemy soldiers, can plow through obstacles, and provide a source of cover, making it an important unit besides its obvious offensive power. You still need to be careful with it though, since the Edelweiss going down means game over. That's not the case with your other units though, who are down when they run out of health. Once a unit is down, you'll have to rescue them with another unit to have a medic evacuate them to safety. Otherwise, you risk that unit permanently dying. Yep, Valkyria Chronicles has permadeath, but it's pretty forgiving and easy to avoid, so don't worry about it too much. Permanently losing a unit isn't even a big deal in this game, since you don't level up units individually, but classes. After each level, you'll get a certain amount of money and experience, which you can then spend to level up the capabilities of a whole class, allowing for everyone of that class to grow stronger. That's not to say that there aren't individual units that are stronger than others though. Every unit in this game has their own personality traits or faults that take the form of passive or active abilities. Maybe you have a character that likes being around men and gets an attack boost from it, or another that's allergic to pollen and has worse aim on certain maps. This is a brilliant way Valkyria Chronicles gives each of its characters a personality that makes them unique from each other through gameplay. Going back to the money you earn from battles though, it's another important resource. You can spend that money to upgrade your unit's weapons and armor, eventually prioritizing different aspects of them. You can also upgrade your tank with passive upgrades and a loadout system to boost specific stats. You'll have to keep on top of these upgrades too, since the game will constantly throw new challenges at you. Each level presents you with a unique challenge that you'll have to find the best way to approach. It keeps the game interesting when it switches between cramped levels to something wide open, and then, just to spice things up, I'll throw in a boss battle. Boss battles come in 2 forms in this game. First is, as you would expect, a big beefy enemy that takes and deals a lot of damage. But then the game will throw a boss at you that's more like a puzzle, and you need to figure out its unique approach and how to beat it. Between these and its varying levels, I like how the game gives you a variety of challenges, even when some aren't as fun. If I had to give some negatives about the game, I would say it's a little grindy at the start. While you can't replay story missions your first time through, you'll still have access to free battles to grind for experience and money, and it's a little tedious in the beginning. It's also a little weird how you earn more experience based on the rank you get at the end of a level, but that rank is almost entirely based on how many turns it took you. So playing recklessly and going straight to the objective gives you a way better rank and more experience than playing strategically. It's a little odd. Altogether though, Valkyria Chronicles is a wonderful game. While the story and characters aren't groundbreaking, there's a lot to like about them. So much so that they even made a 26-episode TV series adaptation, which is apparently decent. Its presentation is wonderful and unique, which could also be said about its strategy shooter RPG hybrid gameplay. Valkyria Chronicles would get a sequel on the PSP, set in a high school military academy setting, a third game also on the PSP, which never made it out of Japan, and eventually a fourth game, which came out on more modern consoles. It's set during the events of the first game, and is apparently a good alternate entry point for the series. But if you'd rather start at the beginning, the original game has been remastered for modern consoles. So if you want something to scratch your strategy game itch, third-person shooter itch, or RPG itch, go play Valkyria Chronicles. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like or comment. If you want to hear about more underappreciated games, Subscribe to my channel for more content.